The offseason for the Toronto Maple Leafs is going to be complicated. We've already seen some turnover within the coaching staff, and we will most definitely see some turnover with the players. And with the core four potentially being disbanded, the focus then shifts to other Maple Leafs that could remain with the team. The Athletic's Pierre LeBrun has come out with an article that has potentially revealed the price it would cost the Maple Leafs to sign Tyler Bertuzzi and Max Domi to ensure that they remain as Maple Leafs. We'll get into all of that and more, but first I want to welcome you to Hat Trick HQ. I am Mark Griffith. If you're new around here and you just love hockey, make sure you subscribe because only less than 15% of the people watching are subscribed. So if you want to stay up to date with all the latest news, updates, reports, and rumors revolving around the NHL, then make sure you hit that subscribe button below. We would love to welcome to the Hat Trick HQ community. But let's get right into this and talk about Tyler Bertuzzi first. Now, once again, this article comes from Pierre LeBrun of The Athletic, very esteemed insider here, and he has some very interesting things to say about these upcoming free agents for the Maple Leafs. Now, Tyler Bertuzzi is who we're beginning with here. I believe he's the man who Maple Leafs fans care about the most. There's mutual interest in Bertuzzi returning to the Leafs, but the team is juggling a few things, so it's not clear if it gets done. It's early, but it's out there that the Leafs want to re-sign him, Bertuzzi's agent said Thursday. We'll see what happens here. He's been a top player on the last three teams he's played with. He's played on the first line with the best players on each of his last three teams, so he would be coveted on the open market, which isn't exactly fantastic news for the Leafs and Leafs fans that really want to hang on to this guy. He brings such an interesting element to the game of grit and aggression, but with a scoring touch as well, which is, kind of the recipe that every successful team needs. They need at least one, if not more, of those guys to be a deep team that goes deep into the playoffs. And hearing that he'll be a coveted player will, of course, mean that he will cost more. So what does LeBrun think here? But whether he goes to market or not, time will tell. Coming off a 1-year, $5.5 million deal, it goes without saying that getting term this time will be important for the 29-year-old. So it's not going to be another, bridge deal, audition deal. It's not going to be 1 year. Bertuzzi's going to be looking for a few more years. And are the Leafs able to afford that? It'll be very, very interesting to see if they can commit to him for a few years, if he is what the Leafs truly need in order to get over the hump and be successful. I personally think he's a player that could thrive under Craig Berube as the new head coach and his coaching style. But we will have to wait and see if he is even on the team and if it's in the Leafs' best interest to make this signing. We'll get into that later in this video. Now let's shift to Max Domi here. Of course, the other big pending UFA here as a forward for this team. And once again, we'll be taking a look at the thoughts from LeBrun. So what's he saying? Max Domi. There's already been a conversation between the Leafs front office and Domi's agent expressing mutual interest in getting a deal done, but no numbers exchanged yet. Domi enjoyed his season playing in his hometown. Similar to the Bertuzzi situation, term will be key for the 29-year-old Domi after he settled for a 1-year, $3 million deal with the Leafs last summer. LeBrun would imagine 5 or 6 years at between $5 million and $6 million would get it done. But how does that fit in with everything else the Leafs will have to get done this summer? Yes, many people do think that Bertuzzi and Domi are priorities, especially if the Leafs do decide to disband the core four. Especially, we've heard rumblings of Marner to Nashville for Saros or even going out to Tampa and bringing in Stamkos. Well, we can't forget about these other players like Bertuzzi and Domi who could be seen as priorities, especially since they both kind of do fit the bill for the new coaching style that will be implemented by Berube. But maybe the Leafs have some other priorities, and we should really focus on these Leafs priorities because while Bertuzzi and Domi are important, they might not be top priority for the Leafs in order to, become the true contenders that we all want them to be. So let's take a look here at the other kind of free agents that the Leafs do have. Now, the only UFAs, of course, are Bertuzzi and Domi who could go to market, but they might not have enough cap space to have them if they do sign some of these RFAs. Now, I think they're the priority should be Nick Robertson. He's only getting better and better and won't cost all that much to sign. And if he's given a bigger role within this Leafs team, he could excel. Imagine him on a line with Matthews or even with Tavares at center. I think it'd be a lot better for him, and he could finally be the player who we all thought he would be as a prospect. So while Domi and Bertuzzi are definitely up there, I almost think it's more important to sign Robertson. But even more important than signing Robertson, we need to talk about the defense here. Now, the Leafs do have Morgan Rielly, Jake McCabe, Simon Benoit, Connor Timmins all signed. Cade Weber, obviously, as well. Could be interesting if he comes in. But the Leafs have Liljegren as an RFA. He's also been in some trade rumors as well, so it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But a bunch of UFA defensemen here. I don't think they'll sign Brody. I don't think they'll sign Giordano. They should absolutely look into signing both Edmondson and Lyubushkin, in my personal opinion, two of the best players on the Leafs in the playoffs. I gotta say as well, Max Domi was sensational in those playoffs, in the 7-game series against Boston, of course. Now, a lot of Leafs fans and many people involved in the Leafs organization think they will sign a defenseman from outside of the organization this year. While it would be amazing to have Edmondson, amazing to have Lyubushkin, a lot of people think they should go for Montour, maybe even do some sort of trade involving the core four for a Seth Jones. All the names of any defenseman that are somewhat in the trade rumor mill has, of course, ended up with Toronto as a destination. Now, I don't know. Are Domi and Bertuzzi priorities over the defense? I don't think so. You need to get that defense sorted first, but maybe even before the defense, you need to get the goalies sorted. So Joseph Woll, of course, is signed for one more year. Martin Jones out of a contract, and Samsonov. Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting and a little bit tricky. Do you trade for a goalie like a UC Saros, or, try and bring in maybe Jacob Markstrom from the Flames, Linus Ullmark from the Bruins, or do you sign one of these guys? Of course, it would definitely be Samsonov from these guys. He really didn't have that bad of a playoffs. He got better as it went on. Game 1 was a little bit sketchy, as we all remember. But I think it's more important than anything for the Leafs. And this is coming from a guy who, maybe the Leafs aren't necessarily my favorite team, but I care about them a lot and I always want what's best for them. They need a goalie. Something needs to change. All these years of, not making it past the first round, and then the 1 year they did, of course, they did not have elite goaltending. It's so essential to have an elite goaltender. Haven't had just an amazing A1 goalie since Cujo, maybe Ed Belfour, and then you got to look further back, of course, for a goalie that was able to win them the Stanley Cup. That is more important in the recipe here than signing, a Domi or a Bertuzzi. I think if they really want to get to that next level, they need a really good goalie. So sign the goalies first, decide what you're doing with the goaltending, then look at the defense and sign at least one, whether he's from out of the organization or not, and then you can focus on Bertuzzi or Domi, especially if Domi's going to be costing $5 or $6 million. I think that's a little bit too much for the Leafs to handle right now, and as much as I would love to keep him in Toronto, it might not be the right play here. Now, let's take a look at, do these signings make sense? Of course, we just essentially went over that. But let's take a look at what the Leafs lineup was in that pivotal Game 7 against Boston. I know it was interesting with the Matthews injury/sickness situation. Of course, the same with Nylander. But these were the lines in that last game. And as you see, both Domi and Bertuzzi were on that top line with Mitch Marner, which was a good line. But of course, it didn't necessarily end up working out. Now, think of who is in the Leafs pipeline right now. You got Easton Cowan, who can come in and play on the wing. Now, I know he's a right wing, and let's say Marner is leaving. Well, boom, you got a cheap replacement there. That should be absolutely amazing. Or you could move a different player around from whatever side of the wing. Now, you also have, of course, Fraser Minton, who is a center. He could easily replace Domi for way cheaper than $5 to $6 million. This is actually from his prospect page here. He's a north-south center with above average intelligence and defensive abilities. He needs to round out his puck skills and add some finesse, but could become a middle six forward at the NHL level. He's actually really, really good. I think this is maybe a bit of an outdated analysis here, but he could easily be a much cheaper and potentially better player than Max Domi. So if the Leafs are to lose Domi, they have the prospects that can cover this. Is it guaranteed that Minton will come up to the NHL level next season? No, it's not, but it's not a bad choice here. And I think buying into the youth, especially since they will be super, super cheap compared to a $6 million player, might be the play here. And we've seen successful teams in the past. They have a blend of great veterans and some younger guys that make sure they don't go over the cap. The Leafs can keep the core four together here if they are willing to bring in some youth and then maybe try and focus more on the goaltending and defense rather than bringing in back Bertuzzi and Domi. You know, we've seen certain players move on that have been successful, like a Zach Hyman, but there's been a lot of the kind of, you know, Mikheyev, Pierre Engvall kind of players that are definitely, you're able to lose them in order to still be competitive. It's very interesting. This offseason is going to be nuts for the Leafs. I'm very excited to see what Brad Treliving does decide to do and maybe the influence that Berube will have over some of these decisions, like signing Bertuzzi and Domi. We will just have to wait and see. Now let's wrap up this video with everyone's favorite part of the day, which is the comment of the day. And this one goes from the most previous video on the channel that was kind of a preview for the Western Conference Final between the Dallas Stars and the Edmonton Oilers. The Oilers did take Game 1, a double overtime winner by Connor McDavid. What a crazy game that was. It had pretty much everything you could think of, including a McDavid double minor to start overtime, which could have been pretty much sayonara for the Stars. But I really like this comment here from this user. Wyatt Johnston is so much fun to watch. And I think everyone that has watched the Stanley Cup playoffs and has seen even just a shift or two of this guy for the Dallas Stars in the playoffs would completely agree. He is electric. He is exactly what every hockey fan wants on their team. And I'm frothing at the mouth thinking of him one day, maybe on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Thank you so much for commenting that. Please make sure you comment if you want to be featured in a future segment of Comment of the Day. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please subscribe if you like what you saw here today and have a wonderful rest of your day.